and I work in the membership team at Diabetes Australia. Thank you for attending this event today. Today we're joined by Rebecca McPhee, an accredited practicing dietitian and health coach based in Perth. We will record the webinar and add it to Diabetes Connect, our online forum, within the next few days. As we mentioned earlier, before I started recording, you can add your questions to the chat. Any questions that you have today that Beck can answer. It's kind of a general kind of thing today. We didn't really decide on a specific topic. I'm just going to read out the acknowledgement of country, and then I'll hand over to Beck. Diabetes Australia acknowledges Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional owners and custodians of this country. We pay the utmost respect to them, their cultures, and to their elders past and present. We extend that respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Diabetes Australia is committed to improving health outcomes for all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people affected by diabetes and those at risk. All right, I'll hand over to Beck now. If you'd like me to read out some questions from the chat to start us off. Let's see.
I just thought I'd say thank you for all taking the time. It's a busy time of the year. I'm a dietitian, particularly I'm interested in diabetes and also a health coach. So it's not just about nutrition, it's what gets in the way of following health advice. And I found that very useful with helping people with diabetes help themselves. So many of you might know what to do, but maybe things are getting in the way. So part of this discussion may be questions about nutrition related to diabetes, or it could be, how do we get over this roadblock to help my diabetes? The other thing that's really good about you guys tuning in is it gives us ideas for writing content. So for this new United program, I'm the nutrition writer for it. And it's really important from a health coaching point of view for us to know what you want and what you don't want. So the more feedback we get and more questions, we might find questions from today go a bit over time, that will formulate an article. It's brilliant. So the more we hear from you, the more we can tailor it, because that's what it's about. And diabetes is not a one-size-fits-all solution. And even from today, I always find I'll be answering a question, but I'll also be putting it back on you because, while I may be a so-called nutrition expert, you guys are the expert in your own life. And I also always learn from people living with diabetes because there's always an exception to the rule. And I've got my little notepad here to jot down ideas because I always learn from you. So probably the first thing to do is I'd be really interested to know what type of diabetes you have. And Erin has put in the chat a little poll where you could answer, maybe it's already been done. If you could answer the questions of, submit your vote, what type of diabetes you have, if everyone can see that.
Yeah, so if everyone scrolls up to the poll that was added at 2:04 p.m, if you scroll up, it's probably the third or fourth last little comment there, then you can select the radio button next to one of the diabetes types and click submit vote.
Welcome, Mandy. I just let you in. So hi, Mandy. Rebecca here, dietitian health coach, and we've got Erin who's assisting me. We're just doing a little vote to know what type of diabetes you have. So if you go in the chat and scroll up, you'll be able to answer the question too. But today is very relaxed and it's two-way. While I might have some recommendations and ideas, it's really good to hear from you guys too, because you've been living with it. Okay.
Let's see.
Any answers there? I can't see.
No, but if anyone's having any trouble scrolling up and not being able to select it, then feel free to write it, to just type it in the chat section.
Just type it in, guys, because there's only a few of us. And while you're doing that, maybe, Erin, we've got some questions. Did you say we've had emailed questions? Yeah.
Yeah, we've had a few people send questions on the forum and via email, so I might add them one by one if it works with you.
Just add one question and that would be interesting, and then we can see what type of diabetes people have, which, I mean, we're dealing with human beings here, aren't we? But there are variations with what you might do depending on your diabetes. Okay, here we go. Erin has put in here. Here's the question from Colleen. My blood glucose levels are spot on after meals, but my fasting so before breakfast, is always too high. I don't eat after 7 p.m. That's a really good question. And to be honest, it's about 50% of people living with type 1 or type 2 diabetes experience this. And we call it the dawn phenomenon. I'd be interested to know, this is in the chat, who else has found this as a problem before or maybe now? Who also gets a bit frustrated? It can be frustrating because you may be really, tailoring your diet, watching the carbs, and you still find that you wake up even after fasting for so long and your glucose levels are high. Has anyone found that? I'll let you type it in there. But this is a combination with the body releases hormones early in the morning to increase glucose production, and that's to fuel the cells for energy for the day. It's part of your sleep wake up cycle. And with diabetes, your body may not produce enough insulin or may not respond well to it. So therefore, like your sugars will go up and release glucose in the morning. So there are things you can do. The first and foremost thing to do is to discuss it with your doctor, whether it's your endo or GP, because if you're on medication or insulin, there may be some tinkering there. But from a non-medication point of view, there are some things you definitely can do, because who's found that diabetes is all about experimentation? There's no failure in experiments. So never think that blood glucose levels have to be perfect. So Colleen, well done, that your blood sugars are spot on for the rest of the day. That means you are managing your lifestyle. It's not always in your control, the fasting glucose levels. I've seen it for many, many years. I'm going to give you some tips, but I'm just interested to see if anyone's written down anything. But has anyone else experienced that? If not, I'm going to give you a few tips. So the first thing that you can do, the obvious thing is the carbohydrates at night. So some people might find that the carbs are a bit too high at night. So if you find that is, you might cut the carbs down and see if that works. The other thing is in relation to diet, a study has found that eating a little low GI, high protein snack before bed for supper actually can help as well. So what you might find is you've cut the carbs down. Can you admit Mandy in the lobby? Because I admitted her before and it mustn't have worked. That's a bit odd. So you might have cut the carbs down at dinner and it still doesn't work. What you could do is try, like I said, a little low GI, high protein snack in the evening. And in general, a yogurt or a glass of milk, something dairy is easy to digest, and you could try that experiment. And I found for some patients that has worked for getting those glucose levels better in the morning. If that doesn't work, the other thing people have done is to try exercising in the afternoon, makes the insulin more sensitive. And when I say exercise, you don't have to be a marathon runner. I've had people go for a walk around it's all relative. I've had people just go for a walk around the block. I've had some patients who have tried doing as well a bit of movement after your meal. And I remember having one patient years ago who just hung out the washing, but for her, that was a lot of work because of her limitations. She'd go and leave the washing for the evening and hang it out. And that movement is exercise, and voila, her blood sugars improved. So when I give recommendations, look in your own backyard, pun intended, and really think if that would work for you. So we've got dietary changes, we've got exercise. The other thing is, because there is a release of hormones, and one of them is cortisol, is looking at your sleep patterns. Because who has heard that sleep can impact blood sugars? It can impact weight. It can impact blood pressure. So if you find that sleep's not so good, don't expect the sugars to be good. So when we look at a blood sugar reading, rather than think, oh, that's bad, think of the main factors that impact our sugars. Is it food? Not always. Is it exercise? Is it medications I'm taking? Maybe there's an interaction. Is it medical conditions? Is it sleep or is it stress? So sleep and stress, the cortisol hormone, are quite interrelated. So always think of the different reasons rather than that's a bad reading. It's not always about diet. That's probably the easiest thing to change first. And if you find that none of that works, then you can go and see your GP or endocrinologist, because it may be that you've tried everything and there may be some medication that needs a bit of changing. Does that make sense? Like, always just think about experimenting. Any comments or questions about that? Who gets frustrated when their sugars, you may be doing the same thing every day and you get a high reading. It's just one of those things. Any
I must
comments?
say that I thought that food was the only. I mean, I'm not living with diabetes, but I work at Diabetes Australia. But yeah, I had heard of this happening, but I thought food was the only real thing that affected it, that caused a high when it wasn't high when you went to bed. So there you go.
Yeah, and that's the misconception. I'm sure you all relate that people who are not understanding it might think it's just the food. Oh, what did you eat? And it's not about that. Unfortunately, our bodies are sensitive, and you may have found when you had COVID, I mean, good luck with blood sugars. So it's damage control at that point. Like, you're just trying to keep safe and well, particularly with type 1 diabetes. But yeah, it's not always about food, but it's always good to start with food. It's probably the easiest thing you can do to see a change in blood sugars. But thank you, Colin. That's a really good question. Could be it could be content for an article. Any other questions?
I'm going to add another one that came in, but I might just quickly say that Alan did mention, and the other 4 attendees may be experiencing the same issue, that the chat section for them is turned off. Oh. So feel free to use the Q&A instead, everyone. And I'll be adding our questions to the chat that have come in via email and the forum, if that works for you, Beck.
Oh, I can see now, Sandra. Yes. Why? Oh, here we go. Hang on. Yes. Why was it so hard to join? I had to go back and register again. Okay. Okay, thank you for all these comments.
That's more of an event question, I suppose. So I'll investigate that. But
thank you. Okay. Okay, I'm just trying to go back up. So, other questions? Or who can relate to what I was just talking about, the dawn phenomenon, or any times in the day where your sugars are up and you can't see why, or maybe you have a suggestion for improving those fasting blood sugars. This is what I like to hear about, what people have tried. And like I said before, it's trial and error, not thinking it's bad. It's thinking, what can I do to change it? Oh, this is a good question. So Barry has said, is it true that it's better to eat protein before carbs at a meal? Who's heard this? We call this food sequencing, the sequence in which you eat your macronutrients. So your macronutrients are your carbs, your protein, and you've got veg, which are mainly carbs. But who has ever played around with the sequence in which they eat? Yep, how many carbs versus protein? Very good point, Julie, as well. Well, I'll start off with food sequencing. So there was a study, really interesting, where people found that the subjects who ate protein first, then veg, and then carbs, which was rice in this study, had better blood sugar readings. Or if they ate veg first, then protein, then carbs, that's rice, had better glycemic control. So what happens is there's a slowdown in that digestion process. We know that protein digests slower. And I thought about this not that long ago, because I did read the study, and I had my best friend in high school was of Italian origin, Anna. And, cultures are really smart. People have been doing this for years. So they always had this authentic Italian meal. I used to love it. They'd start off with a big salad, and they had a vinegar with it, and olive oil. Now, vinegar, adding acid to a meal, helps to slow down the breakdown of carbohydrates and therefore blood sugars. So we started off with a big salad. That's the veg. Then Enza would come in with the chicken, something pan-fried or meat. Then we'd have the protein. And then she'd bring in the pasta. By the time you got to the pasta, it was just a small bowl. And so it's really smart. I'm sure a lot of cultures do that. Well, you might start off with a vegetable soup, or we're getting in the summer season, you might start off with a salad. And there was another study done where people who had a vegetable soup, or it could be a salad, before their whole meal ate less calories overall, because you're filling up on fibre. Fibre slows down the digestion. And then you might have the protein. and then you might have the carbs. So that's a really good question, Barry, because food sequencing really does make a difference. And if you don't want to do it like that, if you want to have just your meal together, you might just eat the meat first, then eat the veg, and then eat the carbohydrate. Now, Julie, great question. How long's a piece of string? How many carbs versus protein? So this is an interesting point because this is not a one size fits all, but in general with protein, we want to have a good amount of protein and less of the carbohydrates. So if I start off with carbs, for someone who's following just a moderate carbohydrate diet and their sugars are fine, you might aim between 30 and 45 grams at a meal. Now, 30 grams would be 2 slices of bread, okay, or maybe a small bowl of your porridge. Now, for some people, they might fall off the chair and go, "What? That's far too much. That's how much I eat in a day." That's fine. Some people follow a very low carb diet. So you might go to something like 20 grams at a meal. Now, to give you an idea, with your journey, United Journey, I'm developing the meal plans. And the meal plans I've done, I've made it low carb, and then you can add on if you need. Okay, so one of the meal plans I've done is around 70, 80 grams a day. So meals are around 25 grams average, okay? So for example, breakfast, I might do eggs with 1 slice of low-carb toast, all right? Or I might be using a lot of veg to bulk up the carbohydrate, or using fruit as a source of carbohydrate to make a salad. So that's the type of approach I've taken. And if you want to add a traditional carb to, let's say, that chicken stir fry, then you add the amount. So the carbohydrate, I would say between 20 and 30 grams is pretty good. But 45, if you're a bloke and you find that 30 grams your sandwiches are not enough and you might have a piece of fruit with it, that's fine. But some people that might be far too much, and then you spread it out to the afternoon. It really depends on the person. But overall, keeping the carbs to a bit of a minimum, say 20-ish grams, is pretty good. Protein, you're looking at around 20-ish grams per meal as well, okay? And if you have enough protein at those 3 meals, snacks, you won't need much, maybe a handful of nuts or a piece of fruit. So stay tuned for my meal plans, because you'll see the approach I take. And like I said, let's say I've got a really good beef dish and there's no traditional carbs added to it. And let's say the carbs are around 10 grams. And let's say, was it Barry had that question, "Oh, that's not enough for me." Then you might add a fist size of carbs, which might be around 20 grams, and that will bulk it up. Whereas for someone else, you might say, "That is enough carbs for me." Does that make sense? So there's not really a set amount, but they are the sort of things you can ask us to write articles. But like I said, maximum 45 grams at a meal, unless you've got type 1 and you're very active, that's completely different. But if you've got type 2, for example, even type 1 wanting to manage your weight, we want to keep it below that 45 grams, ideally 30, between 20 and 30, if that makes sense. Any comments about that? And I hope I haven't missed any. It's a really good question. And actually, the health hour, isn't it, Erin? The one just before Christmas, 18th of December, it's all about carbs. So, Julie, I'll make sure that that's included. So stay tuned. It's all about carbs. I can't remember the name, but it's that question of how much can I have or something.
Managing I feel like manage was in the title.
Yeah. So I'm going to actually, you know what I'll do? I'll do a couple of sample meal plans of what's low carb, what's moderate, what's high. Because we know it's not a one size fits all. Some people need 200 grams of carbs a day because they're so active and very lean. The definition of a low carb diet is anything less than 130 grams a day. Okay, so 130 grams, keep that in your head. Some, like a keto, is going to be 20 to 30 grams. Personally, I find that too low, but some people work with that, and well done you. But 130 grams and less. Remember, that's the definition of a low carb diet. So you might do 30 grams, 30 grams, 30 grams at meals. That's 90. And then 2 snacks, and you might be up to 120. That's still very low. But some people find that maybe that's not good for them. They might have to cut down a bit. And that's fine. But that's what it will be based on for the 18th of December. I'll really try to tailor it as much as I can and give examples. Hopefully that's all right, Julie.
I might just pipe up before we move on to the next question, because I can see Alan has his hand raised.
Oh, please, yes.
I did see a comment earlier that you weren't able to see the chat function, which may be a limitation if you're not an internal and DA employee. I do know that we've been told if you're using the app rather than a browser, then there's a good chance you won't be able to see the Q&A section. So Alan, it may be that you need to log out and log back in on a browser if you are using the app, and then you'll be able to add a question to the Q&A section like some of the other attendees have done.
Sorry, Alan. And if you can't get that question, please email us. I really want to answer your question. So please, and I should have also said, after this discussion, sometimes a question's asked and, there's so many answers and I can't get there because of limited time. I will send extra information, or this always happens, I find, when I go to webinars, you're cooking dinner at night or in the shower and you go, I should have asked that question. Please email us, because the more you ask, the more I can tailor it to you when I'm writing. It gives me ideas. It really does give me ideas. Any other comments or questions or even just an experience you've had that you'd like to share? Or is anyone finding this useful for what I'm saying? So just talk to me so I know that. Do you think, I already know this? Or you thinking, this is a good refresher? I'd love to hear.
I have added a third question that we received by email, I think it was, from Kathy.
Kathy, let's have a look. Oh, Mandy's typing. Before I answer, I want to see what Mandy's saying.
Oh, good, yes.
I'll just look at the other question. Yes, exactly, Mandy. So Mandy says, thank you. The book, The Glucose Revolution, talks about vinegar and the way to eat your food salad first. Absolutely. And thank you for mentioning that. And I should also say, when we talk about acid, it's also vinegar and lime juice. And so when you look at salads all around the world, like my husband's Brazilian, and they have this salad called vinagrete, and they use lime juice, which makes sense. And you have that first, and while they're cooking the meat, and then they hand the meat out, and it's brilliant. So, and it's cheap. The cost of living is an absolute nightmare at the moment when it comes to fresh food. And the way, like I said, my best friend, Anna, the mum who made the salad, was just, she'd buy a big thing of vinegar and olive oil and mix it up, pinch of salt, easy. So the same with sushi. Sushi is made with medium grain rice. Medium grain rice is just medium GI, but they use rice wine vinegar. That's why it's got that sort of soury taste to the rice. That lowers the GI. And if you're having sushi with protein in it, again, that's going to lower it. Okay. The only problem with sushi, I find, is I eat it quite quickly. Then you go, oh my goodness, I feel so full. But you never feel full, do you? At the end, you sort of go, oh, should have had
expands and
it swells. But sushi is not as bad as one thinks because of that whole acid, the protein. You're better off having that rather than a stir fry with a massive bed of rice. That's a killer. That white rice with adding, and actually one of the videos I've done for your journeys is talking about how to be smart with carbs. And if you're having a stir fry, having the protein and veg first and add a scoop of rice on the top. So visually it looks a lot, but you're not doing the whole bed of rice, because the whole bed would clock up around 70 grams of carbs, as opposed to a little scoop might be about 20 grams. So it's all about being clever with the way you do food. Do you know?
Interesting how, it's a kind of, I don't know if it tricks your mind, because it's definitely a case of you put the rice first and then you put the veggies on top, and you can still see the outline of the rice. So therefore,
correct,
there's more rice and veg. It should be the other way around, right?
Correct. So I've got a visual, the videos I've done, I've got a visual to show that. And one of the recipes I've got which is approved by my 3.5-year-old and my hubby, who, veggies can be a challenge. I can't remember what it's called, but it's got a lot of hidden veg in it. And all those veggies already clock up to 16 grams of carbs. And when you've got that protein, by the time you eat that, you don't want the rice. And it doesn't mean that rice is bad, but if you're really trying to watch those blood sugars, or you think, well, I'll have a bit more of the starchy carbs in the day when I'm active and less at night or whatever, and we look at the research from the Mediterranean diet, if we base our carbs on those plant-based carbs like veg and fruit, whole grains like oats, it's going to have other benefits like gut health, heart health, cancer prevention. So the recipes I create are really trying to be smart with other types of carbs that often still are said are not good. You're right. There's a lot of diets out there who will shy away from particular fruits. Unless you've got an allergy, you don't need to. But then also respect the different diets people are on. But think quality and quantity. That's the essence of being carb smart. But definitely vinegar. You think of all these wonderful things our ancestors did. So simple, but it really makes a difference. Are there any other questions? Or you said there's another question, Erin. I'm trying to have a look.
I added there's another carb-related question from this one from Kathy.
Okay.
Keep my low-carb diet at Christmas time.
Ah.
But I end up blowing out. This is in the Q&A section.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Kathy, what does Kathy say? New posts. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you, Julie. And you've just said that, yeah, good info. How to cope over Christmas party season. Oh, what a good question. You're giving some good ones, Julie. Do you know, can anyone tell me what their main issues, if anything? I know from years of seeing clients, okay, and tips and everything, but I'd love to hear from you is what are the potential roadblocks that you may experience over the Christmas season? And when I say Christmas season, God, it starts end of November now, doesn't it? And then up until January 31st. And that's where it can be tricky, whereas years ago when I grew up, it was just Christmas Day and Boxing Day or whatever. Can anyone pop in the chat before I give some tips, or maybe you've got some tips of potential roadblocks during the Christmas season and also what strategies have worked for you? And then I'll give you some ideas.
I'm just thinking about all the chocolates that's at front, that's at the front of IGA and all those places, and that was kind of there for Halloween as well, and yeah, disappeared for maybe a week or two and then it was back.
Yeah, actually that's one thing to start off with. I had a client many years ago and she would, because you know when you go to supermarkets, they always have half price things. I love half price, you know, dishwashing capsules, all the things are really expensive, olive oil, but those lemon chocolates that are half price, one thing that what she'd often do is bulk buy before Christmas, and she'd buy all the chocolates and everything to be prepped, but then she'd get stuck into them. So be careful of bulk buying. If you find you can't trust yourself, if you find my sister, quite often she'll buy Easter eggs and she has to replace them because she gets into them. She's a teacher and it's quite a stressful job, so she'll resort to chocolate. So be careful of the half price. Be very, very careful. Okay. Sandra, I find crumb foods are a disaster for me. Specialist says have some short-acting insulin. Yeah, crumb foods. It's interesting because the breadcrumbs particularly, you could do, particularly also with dual wave boluses as well, with type 1 diabetes. If you've got some slow and fast-acting carbs, you might have to do a bit of tinkering there. But with the short-acting carb, you're getting a spike. Some people, if it's a breaded carb, that's probably what's happening. But if it's a protein that's crumbed, it may not spike you as much. But that's where what you could do is, if you're making it from home, use almond meal, so a carbohydrate alternative to crumb foods. I'm not sure which crumb foods you mean. Let's talk about party foods. When you are going to, Christmas parties or barbecues, the first tip I've got is if you're invited to more than one, okay, choose wisely. So, for example, my best friend always puts on a good spread. Quality cheese, always puts on a really good spread, good champagne, whereas some other places I go to, it might be just, the finger foods that you see all the time. white foods, I will allocate my time to that quality food, and that's my treat. The other ones, I might just have a bit and that's it, and I'll be the designated driver. So be a food snob. Think about what parties are coming up and which one will I really enjoy, because Christmas is about enjoying. And if you think that you're going to gain weight from 1 or 2 treats, incorrect. You gain weight, or your sugars, your HbA1c, you might get a one-off reading, but it's not going to impact the 3-month blood sugar reading unless you start holidaying from December 1 until January 31st. What I advise you don't do, and I've had clients do this, is weigh yourself the next day after you've had some alcohol and food, because alcohol will retain fluid, as does salt. So you can be 2-3 kilos heavier after a treat. Forget doing it. Accept the blood sugar reading. That's my treat, and move on. The problem with that is if we weigh ourselves or focus on the blood sugars and think, I've blown it, it's the interpretation of that situation that will lead to writing off the rest of the week, and then weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. That's the weight gain, not the treat itself. Okay, so a lot of managing diabetes, to be honest, is about how we interpret situations, what people say to us, or how we look at situations. So managing the festive season, choose wisely, choose quality. Pick a party that you want to enjoy. The rest, maybe take a plate that you know is low carb. So, for example, and you know you can pick at, so it might be nuts or a nice caprese salad. So you've got the tomato with bocconcini cheese and basil with a bit of balsamic vinegar, or you might do a cheese platter with more veggie sticks. You might do a bit of a fruit platter that's more carb-based, but you might put more berries in it. So you might take a platter or have a few platters that you know that will be okay for you, seafood, okay? You might do a bit more exercise, do a walk after dinner. We're lucky in Australia to have summer for Christmas. Like I said, be a designated driver, because alcohol can really stimulate the appetite. We eat more, we can become sluggish the next day. But my main concern is people not enjoying themselves. Enjoy yourself. Choose a treat. 1 or 2 times, it might be Christmas Day and a Christmas party, and that's it. The other times, take a healthy choice. Choose healthily. If you only have just a one-off occasion, then eat what you want. Make sure you enjoy yourself. Portion caution. Remember the food sequencing. You might find at the party, if you've got a sweet tooth, then don't have the carbs, starchy carbs. You might think, what do I enjoy best? The rice and potato salad, or do I enjoy that tiramisu? Fine. Have your protein and veg, and your carbs will be the tiramisu. Okay, or if you're me, who's more of a savoury person, you might find that you want more of the savoury at dinner, and then you might skip dessert and have just a bit of cheese. No carbs and cheese. So it's being really clever with the way we do this, and it's how we manage it through our mindset first. Then that will change our behaviours. If hopefully that makes sense. Okay, here we go. Julie, I can limit the lollies but love fruitcake and pudding. Drink mainly water, as don't like fizzy. Brilliant. I love fruitcake and pudding. So that's a good example, actually, Julie. So for me, I know my mum always puts a pudding out. I don't have a sweet tooth, but I really do like a pudding or like a citrus tart or something. So that could be your carb choice. And you might just limit it to a small amount. Easy. There are some Christmas cake recipes that use almond meal that actually reduce the carbs even more as well. I can find that for you if you like. But enjoy fruitcake. That's the essence of Christmas, isn't it? Enjoy that, and then keep doing the water, mineral water. And you might find that if you're having your main meal with more protein and veg, that you'll get away with that fruitcake. And if not, it doesn't matter. It's a one-off. You enjoyed it. Move on the next day. Don't focus on that one higher reading. That will not affect your HbA1c levels if it's just a one-off. Yep. I much prefer you to have fruitcake than McDonald's. Or should I say branded foods? Sorry. I much prefer you to have that fruitcake that Auntie Jean made. It's tradition. It's wonderful. Sandra, this is where one is eating out type 2. Oh, so Sandra, can you clarify? This is where one is eating out. So do you mean tips for eating out? Is that my interpretation? Could you type again, my love, just to make sure I've got that right? Oh, Sandra, got it. The crumbed. Got it. Sandra said, I find crumb foods are a disaster. That's when she's eating out. Yes. Yeah, look, a lot of cafes and restaurants are on a budget, so they'll use cheap things to crumb, okay? Cheap oils, cheap breadcrumbs. However, like I said before, if that's your favourite, if you have a favourite something, enjoy it, move on. But if you find that eating out more often and you're very frustrated with the sugars that go up, then maybe go for something more grilled with a sauce on the side. So maybe go from those crumbed, battered foods to something more plain. That would be probably my best tip. Yep, that's good. That's fine. I understood you, Sandra. So, yeah, the crumb foods, I would, when you're eating out, you might find that you just forego that and just choose something more plain, poached, baked, grilled, more of the salad. I find that, this was before I had a child. I used to go out a lot for Christmas parties and everything. And so I would always try to choose a good piece of protein and veg, sauce on the side. I'd say and this is a mindset for me, it works for me. Like, chips, they're on the plate. You didn't really want them, but they're there. I say to myself, I know what they taste like. And I find them quite boring. So then I'll say, no chips, please, because if the chips are on my plate and I'm talking, I'll just eat them all. So just use those strategies. If you find it's not that appealing, save the stress, take it off the plate, don't ask for it, and then choose the carbs that you like and enjoy that quality and move on. Because chips are a filler, rice is a filler. Yeah. New question. Oh, here we go, Erin. Oh, this is interesting. So any other comments? I'm just having a look here. Oh, the other thing, Kathy, that said about blowing it out and putting on weight. When we say blow it, that's the problem. That's our interpretation. I call that all or nothing or black and white thinking on a diet, off a diet. Shades of grey is I'm going to enjoy Christmas and I choose this and this to eat my fruitcake at Auntie Jean's Christmas bash and eating out at my favourite restaurant, I'm going to eat this. The rest of the time, I'm going to be more mindful and I accept high blood sugar readings. That's part of diabetes and then move on. But if we think we've blown it, we'll write off the rest of the year. And I used to have clients cancel their consultations. They'd deliberately book it in the end of January to make them think I've got to be on track when I come back and see Rebecca. And many would cancel because they think, oh, I've blown it. What's the point? There's always now to start. Now let's have a look here. My goodness, this time is flying. Okay, my neighbour is having a protein drink at breakfast, which is for diabetes. I forgot the name, but she has lost weight and her sugars are better. Should I take this? Thank you, Alan. So there are a lot of products out there like Isoway, Glucerna, a lot of the products which are drinks, and people can take this as a replacement for breakfast. Now, Alan, I'm not sure of your situation, but if your food is working for you at breakfast and you're getting good blood sugar control, weight's fine, then you don't need to have that drink. However, those drinks and meal replacements are ideal for people who may find they can't stomach breakfast. Maybe they've come out of surgery and they're finding hard to eat whole food. Maybe they're just not a breakfast person and then just always in a rush. And then if they don't have breakfast, then they eat too much or eat crap for the rest of the day. So those drinks are there as an addition to the diet if food is not working for you. It's not a replacement to food. So those drinks also are fortified with lots of vitamins and minerals and a high protein and low GI. And there is clinical studies. So, if you read the advertisement, it will say clinical studies have shown it reduces blood sugars, which is true. But so does poached eggs on a little slice of low-carb toast. So just think about if your current food situation is not working for you for some reason, then give it a go. But before you do that, you always consult with your health professional because there may be other medications you're taking that may interact. So it is something that can be added to the diet if needed. And like I've said, many clients I've seen that they just can't do breakfast. They're busy. So a shake on the way to work, easy. If that's going to help you manage your diabetes, then absolutely fine. If not, enjoy food. or travel. I've had clients go for those when they're traveling, because if not, they go to the service station on the road and they eat crap. Maybe take that with you. That would be an ideal option because it's fortified and it's carb controlled, so it's ideal for diabetes, if that makes sense. It's a really good question. There's so much. Who finds on Facebook? You got lots of things marketed towards you. You just have to Google something and then you get someone throwing something in your face about what to buy. So in particular with diabetes, it can be confusing, but always go back to grassroots. From a nutrition point of view, it's basic quality and quantity of food. The complexity is how our mind works. That's what tends to trip us up. You know, we can be our own worst enemy. We can parent ourselves. If we say you shouldn't eat that at the Christmas party, or someone else says that, what's one of the first words we learn as a 2-year-old? No. And we get our back up and then we go, well, sod it. I'm just going to go for it. So always be careful. The equation I've said for anyone who's tuned into my webinars before, how we think plus what we do equals the outcome. You can't control diabetes and get good blood sugar readings and weight off, if that's your concern, unless you have the right type of helpful thinking plus the right behaviours. How we think decides what we do. If we think I'm going to enjoy the festive season and I choose to have treats like that fruitcake, then you won't rebel. But if you think to yourself, oh, that's really high carb and people are telling me that, then you're going to blow it, if that makes sense. So in my experience, the biggest barrier resides in our head. Me too. Me too.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm totally guilty of that.
It's just how the way human beings work, and I have put that in our program as well, a bit about changing habits and about our mindset, because it's really important. Rather than just looking at meal plans and recipes, it's also about dealing with the life stuff that gets in the way. And let's face it, everything's fast these days and stressful, and it can build up like a pressure cooker. So it's important to acknowledge that as well. Any other comments? I'm hoping I'm not missing any comments or any thumbs up. Anyone finding this useful? Questions, queries, problems, inquiries, phobias, neuroses? God forbid.
Yeah. See.
It is hard when we can't chat together. I do apologise for that. But the reason why we don't have people chatting is because it just becomes all these voices everywhere, a bit like when you're in a busy pub and everyone's talking and you can't hear. So that's why we do the online. Or if you find you're a bit sort of reserved or you haven't really got a question, like I said, think about it and email us. Mandy, very helpful. Thank you. Oh, beautiful. Does anyone have any favourite recipes you make at Christmas that you're going to put on the table that you think is quite good? Or do you have any requests for recipes that you would like? That's also a good one, because I'm forever, every day, looking at new recipes to formulate for you guys and new themes. So keep the ideas coming.
Yeah, everyone wins if people are suggesting things that they want recipes for, and then that's ideas for you, yeah.
The one I always do, like I said before, because it just screams Christmas, it's the caprese salad. So you've got the bocconcini cheese sliced, then layer it with tomato and basil, and then vinegar. So that's the acid and olive oil, basil leaves. Or you can put in a little toothpick and you get one little bocconcini cherry ball, put it in there, one fold of basil leaf and one cherry tomato, and you put it all on a plate and fan it out. In the middle, you have olive oil and balsamic vinegar, and people can dip it. It's low carb, it's fresh, it's delicious, and you can fill up on that, because let's face it, parties are about meeting people. And then if you're eating that, and then you can have your favourite, whatever, the potato salad, your mum's potato salad dinner, or the fruitcake or the tiramisu or whatever. But the party platters, if you keep it fresh and yum and within season, it can be budget friendly, but also attractive. You've got the Christmas colours. It's just beautiful. My mum says it's the fancy salad. She's the potato and coleslaw. Bless her. Which I've revamped as well, so stay tuned. But she's always knocked out by the look of it and says it's very fancy. Any other questions?
I can see Sandra commented that it's This has been interesting and helpful, this event. And then a question from Julie.
Oh, here we go. Yes. I find that hot weather raises my levels even though I eat mainly salads. Good question, Julie. Wow, that's a really good question. Yeah, look, hot weather can either increase or decrease people's blood sugars. I've had people with type 1 diabetes, they're hypo when they're holidaying. This is when I worked in England, holidaying in Spain, have maybe a vino or two, and boom, hypo. So hot weather can raise the levels, yep, but it also can be, not enough movement. It can be poor sleep. It can be stress. So the good thing about keeping a diary, Julie, be a detective and think, because well done, it's not diet related, that's for sure. Okay, so think about on the days that they're high, what is different about the days that they're really good? So the days they're good, was that a day where the weather was okay? Your body's in a bit of stress, I can see, when it is hot. Or was it that you weren't active that day? Or was it that you were stressed that day? Or did you have poor sleep? Or are you in pain? Like, do you have a little cold or something? So think about those other factors. And then the obvious things about testing. Is my meter in date? Is everything okay with the strips? Were they put out in the sun? Think of all those factors. But hot weather can increase or decrease your sugars, definitely. But yeah, movement definitely can make a difference as well. Have a bit of a play around with it, but you're hitting the nail on the head. Exercise is one to look at. Sleep, stress, your meter, yep, and medical conditions. I've got this pesky. That's why I've got the water. This pesky cough that's been going on for weeks, post-viral cough. And if you don't feel 100%, if you have blood pressure or blood sugar problems, it's going to affect it. So be a detective. Good. I love it.
I might add another question from email, but then obviously if for one of the attendees questions comes in, you can just ignore anything I type.
Yep.
Let's see. Cool. It's done. In the Q&A.
Oh, I'm so confused. A lot of diets are saying to cut out oats and fruit like apples. I've always been from the school of thought that fibre is good for you, especially low GI ones. Are you supposed to cut these out now? Thank you, Lynn. Who does find it confusing? I think I mentioned that before. There's so many diets out there that are banning whole foods, I call them. Again, like I said, if people are following a particular diet where it's saying not to have those type of fruits and maybe more berries and not to have oats, if that works for you, absolutely fine. However, it's something I always include in my meal plans, because when you look at the years and years and years of evidence behind the benefits of these types of soluble fibres, it overrides everything. So, Lynn, you're right. It's a type of fibre. Oats and apples are high in soluble fibre, that fibre that literally soaks up cholesterol like a sponge. So it helps with keeping cholesterol at bay. It is filling, so it digests slowly. It fills you. I don't think anyone would eat after a bowl of porridge. Now, in saying that, porridge will increase your sugars if it's maybe the instant one, so more finely cut, that is higher GI, and maybe if the bowl's too big. Some people find they can't eat porridge in the morning because they wake up with fasting readings and they're kind of chasing their tail. I've had that with gestational diabetes. So we've put them on eggs and a piece of toast, okay? You might find you need to eat oats a bit different. So a handful of oats with some nuts, like a high protein type granola. But you don't have to cut it out. You'll see in my meal plans, apples are included, oats are included. Let's not forget that we're not just looking at diabetes. You guys are human beings and we're all fighting to prevent cancer, aren't we? I mean, it's quite sad when you think of how many diagnoses there are out there. So having a high plant food diet helps to reduce the risk of certain cancers, such as bowel cancer. The Mediterranean diet, when you look at the research, is high in plant fibre, including these fibres, soluble fibres. That helps to reduce the risk of diabetes if you don't have diabetes, let's say family members, or if you are looking at reducing the risk of heart disease. So if you have, for example, I'm going to give you an example. I had a client once who had their whole grain sandwich at lunch. They said, oh, it's Bergen bread like you recommended. It was really good, but that made my sugars go up. But then the question was, what did you have also with the meal? Well, I had an apple with it and the sandwich. So there are two types of carbohydrates, the bread and the apple. So sometimes people will blame the apple. Oh, too much sugar in there, or the bread. Oh, bread makes my sugars go up. It's not the quality, it's the quantity for that person. So 15 grams of carbs in an apple about that big, and about 30 grams of carbs in a traditional slices of bread, not the low carb. That's 45 grams. And as I said before, that's the maximum you would need to eat unless you're very, very active. Okay, completely different. That may be too much carb for that person. So you do an experiment. Would you have the apple in the afternoon and spread those carbs out? Or if you really like the apple, can you take off one slice of bread and have it as an open sandwich? Then you're going to 30 grams of carbohydrate. So never blame the food. If you go, tick, it's quality, was it the quantity? So apples and fruit contain, as you all would know, one of the sugars it contains is fructose, which is a low GI sugar. Now, too much fructose is not good for us, okay? It can cause fatty liver and all sorts. But 2 serves of fruit a day is something that is recommended for all Australians for the prevention of all those diseases. And if your great-grandparents came, I say this all the time, if they came here, your great-grandparents, and looked in your fridge or in your fruit bowl, your pantry, if they don't recognise the food, you don't want it. Our ancestors taught us what to eat. Food from the earth, from a tree. How much more natural can you get an apple from a tree? So I wouldn't worry about it. But like I said, some people avoid it, and that's absolutely fine because there's always an exception to the rule. But if you like them and you've got no problem with your sugars, keep them in your diet. Certainly with summer coming, a lot of my salads, the carb I choose is fruit. So it might be nectarines, nectarine and rocket salad with feta, or maybe an apple salad with like a walnut salad. So you can make your carbs based on those beautiful plant foods to give you natural sweetness, but low GI and high fiber. So it's a very good question because too much of anything is not good. If you have too much water, you'll dilute your electrolytes. You can have too much water and then you pass out. I've had a client who ate too many carrots and her skin literally turned orange. She had too many carrots. If you have too much bacon, you're on a keto diet and bacon, and avocado. I've had a client who did that and had oil come out of her pores and constipated, okay, because there's an imbalance. So think about, Erin's doing this, so think about diabetes is all about balancing, okay, balancing things. And what works for you may not work for the next person. So we run our own race and always check in with us. That's why we're here, to help you on your journey so that you get the best control. So you control your diabetes, the diabetes doesn't control you. But let's face it, life's about fun as well, enjoyment. With diabetes, just here, but not here all the time. You want to live life, yeah? That's with any chronic disease. Thank you, Sandra. You have to go. Thank you so much for your questions too. Lovely. It's 1 minute to 12.
Yes, I did receive a 5-minute warning, but
I ignored it.
Fairly certain we're not going to get kicked out. But happy to go over a bit if other people are. I always just ignore those things.
I love questions, and I could spend hours. Any other questions or comments, or maybe just a topic you want to know more about for next time? Just throw it at me, and I'll do my research if I need to.
Yeah, that's great. They give you kind of the homework quickly, and then go away and come back. Yeah.
Yep. I'm always updating. I'll know an answer, but it's always good to go back and check the research, because there's always now a lot of research in regards to the science of nutrition, especially diabetes, which is so important. So any comments or questions, please let me know. Oh, here goes Mandy. Where do you get onto the place to ask a question? Oh, the members forum. Did you want to talk about that, Erin?
Oh, yes. If you're referring to where to ask a question later on, you can add it to the members forum. I'm happy to send you an email, or you can send an email to community@diabetesaustralia.com.au and I can pass it on to Beck. If you're wondering about where to ask the question here, wherever you can see it, right? I think some people can only see chat and some people can only see Q&A. So add it wherever you can, whichever section you can see.
Probably, yeah, send me an email, Mandy, because that will give me ideas for next time. That'd be great, because then I can personally answer it.
Yeah, email might be good. I'll type our email address now because we only send.
Yeah, thank you.
Besides the automated forum emails, we only use this email address for renewals, and then I think once a month. So you may not know for the newsletter, so you may not know what it is. Just make sure I've typed it correctly. Looking in Outlook. And you can always, I can always send you instructions as well as sending your question to Beck. I can send you instructions in case you do want to create a forum discussion or respond to an existing forum discussion in the future.
Oh, thanks, Amy. That's great. Mandy's typing, I can see. So we've got another one of these in 2 weeks' time, haven't we?
Yes, there is one which is, I'm not sure if I updated you, it's now happening, I think it was on the 11th.
11th, no, sorry, I fly in Sydney the 10th. So I'll be on your time. Yeah, I fly in the 10th and then the 11th and then it's the 18th.
Yes, which is the conversations number 1, I believe, is and in 2 weeks. Yes, the second one of these ones, which is now with Tash because Ange is yes. Otherwise, yeah.
And then got the carbs one in just before Christmas. Perfect.
Yes, to specifically talk about how to manage your carb levels. Yeah.
With
the crazy period, which does go for about 6 weeks, like you said. It's crazy. I did know, just as a general comment, I did know about the whole, you eat the salad first and the protein and then the carbs later, but I had no idea about any of the vinegar and acid stuff. That was complete news to me. I'm like, oh.
I love it. I love the culture of eating because our ancestors had the answer. You look at, like, my husband's Brazilian and they use vinaigrette, which is vinegar in their salad. You look at the Italians, they use vinegar. The French, the vinaigrette, they use in their salad. The Japanese use the wine vinegar for their sushi. All around the world, it's Greek, beautiful lemons in everything. Egg and lemon soup they make. It's just amazing. Like, you look to your culture. Another thing people often say is when they've been diagnosed with diabetes, especially India, they'll say, I have to give up all my cultural foods. And I say, absolutely no way. You already eat basmati rice, which is low GI, maybe reduce the quantity or maybe pick one type of carb at the meal, not the chapati, the rice and the lentils. Maybe choose one or have a smaller bit of each, or bread and pasta. Maybe, it's all about keeping the foods there but watching the quantity. And there's always a swap. It's a this for that approach. I think it's important we all eat our cultural foods and share our cultural foods with other people. So you don't have to give that up. Our ancestors had it right. We didn't have a lot of lifestyle diseases years ago. So I think it's just thinking outside the box. And in the meal plans, I'm trying to think of cultural foods. There will be themes that might be health related, but there also might be themes of culture that I'll be tapping into as well, like healthy alternatives or what do you call it? Makeovers of traditional favourites.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that's, I've seen the recipes in Circle over the years and there is, a bit of variety there, but I don't know if we really have gone, this is, an Italian style kind of food, or this is something that the people of Greek ancestry would cook. So it's a bit more inclusive and interesting. Yeah.
It's all about diet. It's about living, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if we think of the culture first and then go, okay, how do we modify it? I think it's more interesting.
Yeah. And if you can't modify it, like you said, just have smaller quantity. Especially if it hasn't been cooked by you. And yeah,
exactly. Oh, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, we might wrap up unless Mandy or Russell have any other questions.
And Russell, I can see from Western Sydney, LHD. I used to work for LHD, Illawarra Shoalhaven LHD. So,
Yeah, you're from Wollongong or the Wollongong area.
yes, I was from Gong originally. Gong girl. Yes.
Yeah, nice.
But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. And like we said, please questions on the forum or email us. That'd be brilliant.
Yep, great. All right, thank you, Beck, for coming along. I learned, as I said, I learned a few things myself, which is great. And I'll add the recording to the newsletter, which comes out on the first Tuesday of the month. So next Tuesday. Yeah, and the forum as well. And you can add more questions to the forum or email, and we'll go from there. And hopefully Beck can take some advice from you guys and when she's writing her recipes, etc. Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, thanks guys. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks up. See you later.
See you later.
Bye-bye.